8 years. Now, cell phones used to be, as I showed you, in the 1980s, very simple things. They made phone calls. Nowadays, they're mini computers.
Jesus.
Everyone has a smartphone. We're talking about smartphones here. 8 years of age in the UK, kids are getting smartphones. Now, there was a study came out recently that showed cell phone use in kids can increase brain tumor risk 400%. Now, just let that sink in. Little kids, 400% risk of brain tumor, increased risk by using cell phones. Pretty scary. Business Standard carried the story, as did many other news organizations. But cancer in your kids, it's not a mix we want to think about. There are also studies that show childhood leukemia is linked to EMFs. So if you do nothing else tonight, think about your kids and their cell phones and how you can minimize that, because it's something you need to minimize. On a positive note, there was a school in Australia which actually took away kids' cell phones, took their mobile phones off them. And the positivity that came from doing that while those kids were in school was massive. Kids exercising more, kids communicating more, kids talking to each other more. Huge difference. So cell phones and kids, the less time they have them, the better by far. Someone commented on one of the webinars I did quite recently as I was explaining this, and I'm not trying to make people feel guilty, but what she said was, she said, giving a kid a cell phone is the same as giving a kid a cigarette. And yes, I can see that. And some of you out there say, no, it's not. No, it's not exactly the same, obviously. But it's putting them at risk the same as giving them a cigarette puts them at risk. Keep cell phones away from kids if you possibly can. Last thing about kids, these are kids who are still in the mother's womb, the fetus. EMFs can cause shorter pregnancy, increased fetal heart rate variability, and cause the babies to be born with smaller head and chest circumferences. This is a study. This is not me coming up with this. Studies show that. So EMFs from phones, huge issue. Anyone that honestly looks at the data has to admit that cell phones are a huge danger to health if they're not used sensibly. Now let's move on to another huge issue, smart meters. You might know smart meters are a huge issue, you might not. If you don't, I strongly recommend you go to this website, takebackyourpower.net, takebackyourpower.net. They made a movie in 2017 about how dangerous smart meters were. Fascinating film. You can watch it for free at that website. They also have massive amounts of information about smart meters in general and how you can get a smart meter removed from your home or how you can refuse one in the first place. Takebackyourpower.net. Highly recommend that website. If you're in the UK, you can go to www.stopsmartmeters.org.uk. Stopsmartmeters.org.uk, and you'll get the information there about why smart meters are so bad for you. Now, North Carolina's Duke Energy, they actually gave people an out from smart meters. You had to go to your doctor, and if the doctor could said you had electrosensitivity, you didn't have to get a smart meter. Now, think about that. The energy company is actually recognizing and admitting that if you've got electrosensitivity, you shouldn't put one of these in your home. Interesting. You can go out and buy a smart meter shield. They're not expensive. They're a good start if you're not, going to deal with the whole EMF problem. And they're about $50, but they will help cut down the issues from your smart meter. Now, everything we've talked about so far is to do with your home. Let's talk about the office just for a moment or two. Many of us are working from a home office nowadays, which is great, but some of us are still stuck in this type of bullpen situation where we have 10 different computers around us, 10 friends around us, 10, well, they might not be friends or colleagues, 10 people there who've got their own computers and Wi-Fi's and phones and printers, and you're being fried by EMFs if you're working in that situation. You really are. So just think about that. You've got the home situation, you've got the work situation. But how widespread is the EMF problem? Well, this lady, Magda Havas, she is from Trent University, University of Toronto, Cornell University. So a very well-credentialed lady, 71 publications. Spends her time conducting research on things like acid rain, metal pollution, and acts as an expert witness in court cases. Now, current research is to do with biological effects of EMFs. Well, she said this. She said 3% of the population have severe electrosensitivity symptoms. So 1 in every 33 people walking about has a major issue with this. It's killing them. But she said 35% of the population, that's 1 in every 3 people, have mild to moderate symptoms. That's a crazy number. 1 in 3 people are suffering. Now, it can cause all sorts of things. It's depression. It can cause you to feel tired all the time, or cause you to feel edgy. Not have a clue why. So, you've got to think about, why do I not feel good? Could it be EMFs? Can EMFs be the problem? The reported health effects of EMFs, these are some of them. Impaired immune system, reduced melatonin, brain tumors, eye problems, memory loss, DNA damage. It's crazy. And the results of those things, fibromyalgia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, depression, arthritis, diabetes, anxiety, and cancer. All these things touched on and caused by EMFs. Now, everything we've looked at to this point, 4G technology, 4th generation. What 4G means, that's simply what it stands for, 4th generation. 5G, 5th generation. 5G is way more frightening. Way more frightening. So let's have a look at 5G. If you look at that phone we talked about in the 1980s, which was 1G, first generation mobile phone, if you wanted to download a Star Wars movie on that, do you know how long it would have taken you? 4 months and 27 days to download a Star Wars movie. Come up to 5G, do you know how long the same film takes? 1.5 seconds. That's how much more powerful our cell phones are with 5G than they were with 1G. Isn't that ridiculous? 4 months is against 1.5 seconds. But we're still basing our safety standards on the 1980s. Madness. Now, this is a lady called Sharyl Attkisson. Sharyl was a reporter with CBS. And she said that CBS kept caving into corporate interests when she wanted to run a story. So she'd want to do a story about the telecoms industry. They wouldn't let her because their advertisers said, no, can't do that. She wanted to do a story on the quality of water. Water companies say, no, can't do that. CBS would stop. So she left. She resigned. And she started her own production company called Full Measure. And this is the program that she makes. Now, this is her take on 5G and what 5G is around the world. It's a little old. It's like 6 months old now. But it's still very, very relevant. And it still explains exactly what 5G is. So let me play this for you. It's 7.5 minutes long. You'll find this extremely interesting. 5G, Full Measure, Sharyl Attkisson.
Maybe you've heard about exciting new 5G technology that promises to make our connections to the internet and all of the things connected to the internet faster and better than ever. Like other cell phone technology, 5G emits radiation. 2 federal agencies recently said the available scientific evidence does not support the idea that 5G emits enough radiation to hurt people. But some scientists disagree. At first, the concern sounded far-fetched. We were surprised by what we learned. Today's cover story is 5G Whiz. Chances are you haven't met many people like Professor Martin Pall. Is it true that you do not carry a cell phone?
Yes, I don't carry a cell phone.
How do you possibly communicate in today's world without your cell phone?
I use a wired mouse. I use the wired connection from my computer to my printer. And so everything's wired. And I even have a shield over the screen so that I get less EMS from the screen. So there are ways of protecting yourself.
EMF, electric and magnetic fields, are invisible areas of energy or radiation produced by items like electric appliances, computer screens, and cell phone technology. Paul is so worried about the potential for health risks from EMF, he even has special clothes with lots of little metal wires to shield him from the rays. We had no idea when we asked, but yes, he's wearing the fabric right now. Is that a shirt?
It's a t-shirt, yeah. And it has little metal fibers in it, and it helps to shield your
Makes
torso.
them bounce off or not come through?
Yeah.
But before you make the mistake of writing off Paul as a nutty professor, you should know he's considered one of the world's preeminent scientists on electromagnetic fields. And his concerns are backed up by dozens of peer-reviewed scientific studies. You got your BA at Johns Hopkins University, very prestigious institution. You got your PhD at the California Institute of Technology. So you're someone who comes to this issue with a great set of credentials and experience.
Yes, and My bachelor's degree is in physics, and my PhD is in biochemistry and genetics. So I've got both the life sciences and the physics. It's the way in which these two interact which is crucial for understanding how EMFs impact the cells of our bodies.
We'll get to that in a moment. But first, what is 5G? And for that matter, what are the previous Gs, which stands for generation, of the world's mobile networks? The rollout of this new technology is happening as we speak.
We're going to have 5G. We're going to have the best 5G in the world, just like we have everything else.
But the same magic that makes 5G bigger, better, and faster poses serious health risks to people, says Paul.
We know that the EMFs impact the cells of our bodies, all the cells of our bodies, by activating some channels. And when they do that, they produce all kinds of effects. And those include neurological, neuropsychiatric effects, they include reproductive effects, they include oxidative stress, which is involved in essentially all chronic diseases. So I'm deeply concerned about this situation.
Is it your feeling that mobile phone use and 5G in the future have been and are causes of chronic disease epidemics in this country?
I believe that the exposures we already have are producing major effects already on our health, and that 5G will be vastly worse than anything that we are already exposed to.
At least 3 expert medical groups have linked certain kinds of electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, to cancer, particularly childhood leukemia. The U.S. National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, a working group under the World Health Organization, and a European scientific committee, which studied cell phones in particular. Paul says there's more to worry about.
What's been shown is you get depression, I can't sleep, I'm tired all the time, I'm depressed, I've got headaches, I can't concentrate, I'm anxious. All the things that everybody complains about now, we know are caused by EMF exposures. And not just one type, but multiple types of EMF exposures.
The concerns are shared by citizens and scientists around the world who are campaigning against 5G. A small sidewalk rally last May in Bethesda, Maryland.
Hello, Council.
And in Sacramento, California last June.
These antennas are being installed without our permission, without any warning at all. Many of us do not want to be guinea pigs in this experiment, but we apparently have no say in the matter.
Still, U.S. regulators insist there's nothing to fear. After reviewing hundreds of studies, the Food and Drug Administration recently told Congress the current safety limits for cell phone radiation remain acceptable for protecting the public health. At the same time, the FDA did urge the cell phone industry to support new research on cell phone safety.
We've heard from a lot of witnesses about the very important potential of 5G.
At a hearing in February, Senator Richard Blumenthal asked wireless representatives if they had funded new safety studies as the FDA asked. They said,
No, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here, so far as health and safety is concerned.
how do you explain them saying the science doesn't exist, that there's nothing that gives us cause for concern?
It's all corruption. There's no other explanation. I think there are at least 25 different reviews that have been published on this over the years.
You're implying that the industry, the telecommunications industry, is so powerful here in this country. Is that a reason you think why our government hasn't commissioned these studies and isn't talking about it?
I can't figure out any other reason.
Whatever the case, 5G deployment in the U.S. is moving full steam ahead. 5G for mobile phones is already being deployed, with broader expansion coming in 2020, especially in big cities. Supporters say there's no reason to think it's dangerous. Critics say there's no evidence it's safe. It strikes me that there's probably zero chance we're going back from the technology that creates this kind of exposure.
We need to dramatically decrease exposures. We are taking risks of the sort that no rational society can possibly take. And we're doing this blindly and in my judgment, with absolute stupidity.
The FCC has been criticized for not updating cell phone safety standards since 1996, but FCC officials insist there's nothing special about 5G and that the higher frequency signals used to deliver it pose no health risk.
Fascinating. No research has been done. They have done zero research on 5G. The phone companies admit it. Pretty mind-blowing. Now, in 2020, deployment of 5G really started to take off. And it's increasingly the case that sources outside our immediate control are more and more an issue. As you can see on that map there, 5G is taking over the globe. It's going to be literally everywhere. Now, if you're in the US, you can go to antennasearch.com and get more information about where antennas actually are in your neighborhood. Just put in your zip code and that will help you to find out where antennas actually are located for you. Now, earlier in this year, someone accused me of using scare tactics in the webinar. And I thought it was an interesting thing to say because, yes, there are elements about 5G that are pretty scary. But if you think of it this way, look back to the cigarette thing again. And let's say I'd done a webinar on cigarettes 30 years ago, back in the 50s even, when Chesterfields were happening. Let's say webinars existed. And I came out and said to people, hey, smoking gives you lung cancer. There's all sorts of issues here. You got to be really careful. People would have been up in arms. They'd have said, Chesterfields are good for you. There's no issue. They're fine. So I'd have been accused of scare tactics. So these are not scare tactics, folks. I'm just being honest. Because unlike cigarettes, we keep saying you can't see these, you can't smell them, you can't taste them. But they're still there. Now, we always do a little segment on this because people are fascinated by it, to be honest, and they always ask, 5G and coronavirus, is there a link? There are all sorts of videos came up on YouTube when coronavirus was happening, saying 5G is causing this, etc., etc. And here in the UK, they even burned down 5G network towers because they said it was causing coronavirus. Well, let me give you the facts. There were hundreds and thousands of videos, literally, on YouTube, telling us about 5G and how it was connected with coronavirus, etc., etc. But the facts are this. Your immune system can be compromised by constant EMF exposure. There's no doubt about that. If you sit beside a router or have a router in your bedroom, as my son did, for a long time, you're going to have issues with your immune system. Your immunity will be lower. Now, another fact is that Wuhan, in China, where they say coronavirus came from, it was the pilot city for 5G in China. It was because, there's Chinese news agency saying in October 2019, Wuhan, capital of Hubei province, is expected to have 10,000 5G base stations by the end of 2019, when coronavirus started. So people make the link between 5G hitting your immune system, Wuhan being the center of this, and coronavirus coming out of there. And that's why people make the link. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it caused it. In fact, I don't believe it caused it. But would heavy 5G exposure lead you to have a worse immune system? And therefore, if there was a virus going around, would you be more likely to get it? The answer to all that is yes. So, those are the facts. So, what else is coming down the pipe with 5G? Well, this video surprises people who watch this webinar more than any other video. This is how 5G is being used in China right now. It's split into two. I've taken two videos and made a very clear distinction between the two of them in the middle, so you'll see when it changes. But this will blow your mind. This is how 5G is being used in China right now.
So, picture your life in a place where everything you do, what you buy, how you behave, is tracked. The government gives you a score, and the score is a measure of how trustworthy you are as a citizen, and determines what you're allowed to do, like ever. Boarding a train, getting a mortgage, all goes back to this score. It's called social credit. It sounds like that show Black Mirror, but it's actually happening in China. So how does that change you? Does it change you? What does your life look like when your every move is watched? The system's eyes are in big data, artificial intelligence, and roughly 200 million surveillance cameras. And that's totally fine with Ouyang Haoyu. She's 21, graduated from a good school with solid grades. She's diligent. She's nice. No surprise, she's a 752. That's her rating with Sesame Credit, a private company working with the government on the algorithms for the social credit system. The scores go from 350 to 950 and are based on habits and behavior. Buy clothes or diapers, it's good. A lot of alcohol, too many video games, not so good. How Use 752 puts her in model citizen range and gets her discounts and privileges, like using a shared bike without a deposit. She likes it. Her friends do too. They all have pretty high scores.
It's a mechanism like pushes you to become a better citizen, to build on the trust, especially on the Chinese market.
Because you're not going to be punished if you haven't done anything wrong.
I think that's the point. I think the system is working as a warning or an alert to push people to do it, to be a good person.
And it's mandatory. When it goes national, social credit scores will be assigned to every one of China's citizens for life. And what's weird is that so many people seem okay with it. It's complicated, but China went from extreme poverty to economic giant pretty quickly. A credit history system didn't grow at the same pace, so people would default on loans and get away with it. Add in scandals around fake food, tainted baby milk, counterfeit goods, and what you've got is a big problem with trust. So, in 2014, the Communist Party called for a system to allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven, while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step.
是表示你的专注力显示得很高。
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走神了，
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
做出选择吧，这样。
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens.
Mind-blowing, yeah. Incredible. Now, if you don't think that that sort of thing can happen here, let me tell you, we already have extensive censorship. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the number of people they censor, the number of people they close down who've got good natural health remedies out there is frightening. Like vitamin C, for example, is shown in so many studies to help with COVID. They'll close you down if you say that out loud. Look at Amazon. Amazon have vans going around now. Their delivery vans take 16 video feeds simultaneously of everything that's going around there and send it back to headquarters. YouTube took down over 300,000 videos about vitamin C, etc. with COVID. So there is all sorts of censorship going on around us fed by 5G. Now you might have an innocent looking Amazon device in your home, like an Echo or something. Well, let me tell you one thing about that. This came out in 2021. The Defender said this: you should disable Amazon Sidewalk before the 8th of June last year. Now you might not even know what Amazon Sidewalk is. Most people don't. Basically, Amazon Sidewalk is something, if you've got one of these devices and you don't opt out with Amazon of using it, then Amazon say you're opted in to use it. And basically it means your neighbors can use your internet signal. If their Wi-Fi goes down, they are allowed by Amazon to use your internet signal through these devices. Even CNN in 2021 came out with an article saying why you should opt out of Amazon Sidewalk and which devices it's on. There's all sorts of things going on around us. that we have no idea about. 5G ultra-fast internet makes all these things possible that we've shown. China's credit system. China claimed to be able to find anyone in their cities in 5 minutes if they have a photograph of them through their facial recognition. And they use that, sadly, to identify certain ethnicities, and they suffer. The Uyghur community, for example, all sorts of human rights things out there about that. It also makes microchipping your vaccine information possible. That's coming down the pipeline, apparently. They can control, if they get a digital currency, they can control what you buy. They can say, hey, you're not allowed to buy drugs, you're not allowed to buy cannabis, you're not allowed to buy a gun, you're not allowed to buy ammo. They can control it all, because if everything's digital, they control the banks. They can stop you traveling. There's even crowd control via 5G power. There's things out there at the moment called active denial systems that they can use. Now, this gives you massive pain without actually causing you any injury. You feel like your whole body's on fire because they're using millimeter wave technology to disperse crowds and so on. That's already happening. But what do scientists say about this? Some people believe it, some people just say it anyway, follow the science. Well, let's look at what scientists say, specifically EMF scientists, say about all this. If you go to a website called emfscientist.org, you will find there over 250 scientists who work in EMFs have asked the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the United Nations to please look at the information on 5G before you roll it out. Actually do some studies on health, because they don't believe that it's not going to cause massive problems. emfscientist.org, you can check that out. There's another website called wearetheevidence.org. This is a website for normal members of the public who go and put in their stories about 5G and EMFs and what it actually does to them. So you'll find there are airline pilots, teachers, doctors, airline pilots who can't fly anymore because there's Wi-Fi on the planes, teachers who can't teach, doctors who can't work as a doctor in a hospital because there's Wi-Fi in there. You'll find all these stories. And if you've got a story, please go to wearetheevidence.org and put it in there, because we want to get as much of this documented as possible. Now, one of the stories is an incredibly sad story about this little kid, Jenny Fry. Jenny was 15, and she was highly electrosensitive, couldn't go to school, and her school wouldn't do anything about it. They wouldn't let her take lessons in a classroom that hadn't got Wi-Fi. And sadly, she was found hanging in the woods. She killed herself. She literally took her own life because she could not deal with the electrosensitivity that she was suffering. Very, very sad. So the characteristics of 5G, incredibly fast and concentrated, needs a station every 500 feet, and everything worldwide connected to it. That's what they want. It's totally